This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Just watch me dance. Just watch me.
Hour 2 OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hazy, O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill off today. Almost got caught there. Almost got caught, but he's off today. Are you going to the mall later? That's what I meant by that. Jamie Noodles McLennan and Jonas Siegel of The Athletic with us. And Jason Strudwick coming up here in a moment. We'll get his take on Carson Soucy of the Canucks being suspended one game. That news just came in for his cross-check to the head of Connor McDavid. So Soucy gets a game, and that's going to hurt. I mean, it's not losing Quinn Hughes. It's not the equivalent of losing Shelovs right now, the way he's playing. Yeah. But, Soucy, Zadorov, like they Jim Rutherford went in there. Now, he's lucky because he inherited Quinn Hughes. And Hughes is a pure number one stud.
Winning the Norris this year.
Winning the Norris this year. And that goes a long way. When you establish you've got a pure stud number one that can play 30 minutes, which is exactly what Hughes does, that helps. They acquired Hronek, which was a huge get. Yeah. Remember at the time when they made that deal, I didn't quite understand it from either team's perspective. Why is Detroit moving off him? And what is Vancouver thinking at this point? It's worked out well. But with the knowledge that you have those two guys who are really quality puck-moving defensemen, and Hughes is on a completely different level, he basically said everyone else is going to be a monster. Myers is a monster.
Mutants.
Soucy, Cole, Zadorov, like they're mutants. They're guys. If you want to get in the corner, you want to get in front of the net, go for it. But they are going to make you pay. And Jim Rutherford's got 3 cups for a reason, and he's a believer in that. And we'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward. But Soucy's out.
They played hard, and I couldn't. Like I say, I woke up this morning thinking fine, and then Jonas, you thought it was going to be a suspension, but I didn't know.
I don't know that. Nah.
It's tough to predict with this league.
That's the thing.
Tough to predict with the league.
Nobody knows.
Well, you're right. Like you can make a case. That's the wrong wording. I don't know if you can make a case. We all have an opinion, and then I want to hear the video. I want to hear the explanation from the league's standpoint, because I thought either fine or one game, playoffs, playing for keeps, all of that. But they're going to say, hey, you know what? It was at the end of the game. Non-hockey play, all of that type of stuff that's going to be factored in. If it was a regular season, if that was a Tuesday in November, it's probably a couple games easily.
Or is it more. 5 games like it was for a certain someone in Toronto?
Could be.
Yeah, but you're right. But the thing is with Morgan, and I'm not going to justify, Morgan skated over to
empty
he made
net,
the empty net. There was more of an interaction there. Yeah,
yes,
this was still it wasn't a hockey play. They're jousting and slashing at each other.
And McDavid was engaged. He was hacking at him too. Anyone suggesting that 2-hand slash though was like a suspension or something.
I hit him
that's
in the
when
pants.
You're just being ridiculous. I get it. If you're in Vancouver, you're a Canucks fan. I understand it. I understand the bias of sports. That's what makes sports so great. You're supposed to love your team. You're supposed to root for your team. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're not being objective. It's silly. It's goofy. Now, Vancouver, though, is highlighting a play where Hyman came in flying into a scrum and cross-checked Zadorov in the face. I think we have the video that we can play up on TSN 2.
Yeah.
And Tocchet is referencing it with his media today. And, again, they're politicking. Not that anything's going to happen necessarily. I don't think Hyman is going to be suspended or fined. I don't think we would have known by now. The league would have seen the play and obviously didn't do anything. But this is a scenario where teams will send clips to the league, or GMs will lean on the league and say, if you're going to give it to our guy, you better be aware that sometimes it happens with the other team. And I guess Zadorov, when he took the cross check to the face, actually needed stitches. So it got him. Not only did it hit him, like it did some damage on him. Yeah. So again, that's after the play, puck was smothered, little scrum behind the net, Hyman comes in flying, and the rest is history.
And let's be honest, there's been missed calls. McDavid high-stuck Hughes. Like, that was a 4-minute penalty. It was an errant stick that, what was that, 2 games ago?
Yep.
In Vancouver. Like that, Hughes has got a cut on his cheek. He didn't do that to himself. It was an errant stick by 97, and it was a missed call. Like you can argue till you're blue in the face on both sides. You're not going to have a perfectly reffed game. And the more and more I think about it, Brian, like I've always been kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to you, and because I always say get it right. Get it right. Get it right. Like I've been a proponent of replay, especially, I've always said there should be one ref on the ice and one ref in the stands going, you missed the slash back there. But what's happening now is there's no definitive answers on some of these things. And you just got to go back to your initial, hey, well, the call on the ice was a goal, so we're going to call it a goal. The call on the ice was no ice. So
yeah. Just
the black
get rid of the
and white,
whole song and dance. It's just aggravating. It's a waste of time. Yeah,
the black and white stuff I'm fine with. The review on did it cross the line or not.
Me too. That's fine.
But even that they can't get right sometimes.
Well, if there's a piece of equipment covering it, what are you supposed to do? I mean, there's only
I don't know.
so much
Can't we fix that? Can't we figure that out?
How would you do that?
A chip inside.
I don't know exactly. Like we have these things.
I know, but I think they've tested that, and it affects the way the puck bounces and the way you don't want the game to change because of a chip in the puck. You know what I mean? Like if the players don't like it, screw it.
That problem.
I'm sure they will at some point.
If there was a chip in the puck, Struddy's slap shot would be 78 miles an hour.
Yeah,
it would have gone up. It would have gone up from 75.
You're probably right. It would have gone up. And I'll say this, too. I think, probably the guy that's loving all this discourse about cross-checks and suspensions is Stuart Skinner, because he's taken heat, but not nearly as much as he probably should, because it's more about McDavid getting hit and Will Soucy gets suspended and the refs are screwing us and how do you beat She-Loves. Meanwhile, Stuart Skinner, he's killing this team. Like that's what happened in Game 1, and it certainly happened yesterday to the point where they pulled them. Here's our buddy Jason Strudwick coming on after a loss out in Edmonton, Struddy. And a lot of people here are wondering, and I'm hoping you have the answer, will McDavid make it to the World Championships? Would he accept the invitation?
Not nice.
Okay, first off, let me you guys are it's so typical. You guys want everything to be perfect. Like, you guys are probably in favor of robot umpires. So every call is perfect. Take the humanity out of the game. Why don't we take the athletes out of the game, put robots, so everyone plays perfect? Like, what we like is the chaos. Chaos is what makes fun for sports, I believe. Yeah. And everyone gets on their soapbox, this got to be perfect, this got to be perfect. Now we have offside reviews, goal reviews, all these things, high sticking reviews. It is so painful, and it sucks the joy out of the game. It's unbelievable, so I get it. So will McDavid make to the World Championships? Listen, don't bring your own frustration about what is it? Ontario? Are they even Ontario's team? I think the Sens may have taken that.
They
spot,
might have. Yeah, they might have.
Like, why did Tavares go? What is he?
Hey, he's a true Canadian. He's a true Canadian.
Oh,
yeah, he loves his
He's
country.
trying to get out of town.
I think there's probably accuracy in that, too. I think
he didn't want Jonas showing up at his house.
That's right. Jonas was
so about that no movement clause. What are you going to do?
Yeah, you can't have that. But in all seriousness, I mean, what is the chatter today? Is it more about the rough stuff? I agree with you, Struddy. I said to start the show, I think the playoffs began over the weekend because you actually have hatred, you've got crazy plays, you've got physicality, you got nastiness, now you got fines, you got suspensions, you got GMs speaking out of nowhere, people are losing their minds. Like, this is the good stuff right now. But in Edmonton, is it the fact that they're down 2-1? Is it She-Loves is in their head? Is it Skinner? Is it the Soucy on McDavid? Like, what is the main event in Edmonton this morning?
Well, there's two parts. I think the big narrative is the goaltending play, and She-Loves has outplayed Skinner in this series. And this is going to sound very biased, but I feel like She-Loves is getting lucky. He's making some saves, but he's making lucky. Like, you think about the breakaway last night, Leon Draisaitl, 9 times out of 10 he scores that, right? Kane hits far post, like squarely on the post and doesn't get it. And there's some other saves, even the one where Perry shoots it, he's kind of going, he gets out of, and Noodles can speak more, but he gets out of position. Now he has to fight back into position and make what looks like an incredible save because he's out of position. But to be fair, he's getting the job done, and he's outplaying a goalie that played the whole year in the NHL. So he's doing a great job. Can the luck hold? Well, the Oilers get enough shots at him. At the other end, you got Stuart Skinner, and man, it'd be nice to see him. I felt last night if they could keep it to 3 goals, they had a chance, right? They weren't able to do that. So I think that the goaltending battle is something that, who starts next game? I'd probably go Pickard. And I think that's a really hard decision to make. I'm glad I'm not making a decision, but I'd probably go with him. But I think the storyline that everyone's forgetting is that the third period in overtime of Game 2, the Oilers dominated as much as we've seen anyone dominate anyone in these playoffs. I thought for Game 3 they'd come out on fire. They didn't. They scored the first goal, but it was JT Miller, it was Zadorov, it was all these guys that came out with way more intensity, and they pushed the Oilers, and the Oilers couldn't handle it. They almost made it through the period, and then a soft backhand through the middle made it 3-1. And now all of a sudden you're chasing the game. So my concern is obviously the goaltending, but being ready to start the game and to set your mark on the team. You look at the first couple shifts, Matthias Ekholm gets rocked twice by guys. Where is that being ready to play that level of intensity to push back on the Canucks?
Well, that's where I was going to go, Struddy. Is I said it right at the start of the show, at the 4 o'clock hour. It looks to me like Vancouver's playing for keeps and Edmonton's just playing hockey. And now I shouldn't say that because 29 and 97 are playing for keeps. 29, he's not 100%, but he's still out of this world. And I think Ekholm's looked good. So there's 3 guys really on that team that have showed up for playoff hockey. Everyone else looks like they're kind of just playing hockey. And Vancouver, you could make an argument. I don't know how you feel about this, Struddy, that either one of these teams could be up 3-0. Because, Vancouver holds on and gets that in overtime, it's 3-0. But that being said, if the Oilers close out Game 1, they do Game 2, and then last night if they get a save and continue to beat Sheloff or try and beat him, they could be up 3-0. But where did the Oilers go now? Does Knobloch try and challenge the bottom of the roster, challenge some of these guys? Because there's a lot of lip service. Vander Kane's saying the right things in the media and stuff, but when is that next wave going to show up? Because to me, the Oilers are done in this series if they don't play playoff hockey.
All really good points, Nils. And listen, you guys are going to be surprised by this, but there were nights where I didn't get to play a lot in the NHL. And the coach would come down and he'd say, hey, we need you. We're going to need you at some point, Struddy. And I'd be looking at all the other guys going out, and I'm sitting there. I'd be making a sandwich, maybe having a dart, just knowing that my night was done. I wasn't going to play much. And at the end of the night, I played 6-7 minutes. The coach would say, boy, he didn't do much. Yeah, you're right, I didn't do much, because every time I got out there, I had to get my legs going like the Tin Man because they're so stiff. And by the end of that shift, they felt better. Then there'd be a penalty, a TV timeout. There'd be something else going on. I wouldn't get out there again for 10 more minutes. So I think the Oilers had 5 players with 10 minutes or less last night up front. 5. That's half of your forwards who are getting out there rarely. And we need you. We're going to need you. Well, when are you going to need me? Because right now you're not using me. So what comes first? They say they need more for the bottom 6. I get it. But if you're not playing, what do you want me? How do you want me to produce? I thought actually the fourth line last night of Ryan, Janmark, and then whoever was there, Brown or whoever, actually had. I thought they punched a little bit heavier than they were actually playing at 6-7 minutes. 6-7 minutes. You can win a prize at the church raffle and play 6 minutes in the NHL because all you do is just skate around. It's like 5 shifts. 5-6 shifts is nothing. So I think, and this is another big decision outside the goalie, do you split up Leon and Connor? Because if you do that, you're able to get more people in game, and then more people are engaged in that game rather than the big 5 playing, who they're fun to watch and they're playing well. But playing 30 minutes a night and then having 5 guys not play 10, I don't know if that's a recipe for success for any team, but right now the Oilers.
With Jason Strudwick, well, yeah, it's interesting out west. You've got Dallas and Colorado now tonight, Game 4, where it feels like a must-win for Colorado at home. It's going to be the same thing with Game 4 for the Oilers. And then in the East, series can close in the next 24 hours. Where I think the Rangers will win tonight, although it's been a closer game than the actual series number might indicate. I think Carolina feels like they've been jobbed a couple of times, and Shesterkin's been great. Yet the Garden will be rocking tonight. I think the Rangers could close in 5. I think Florida will close in 5. And it's an interesting discrepancy. It sure looks like, Struddy, from our standpoint out east, it's a crash course between Florida and the Rangers, and those two have probably been the best teams in the East all year or close to it. And out west, I still think it's a crapshoot. I think it could be any combination of Edmonton, Vancouver versus any combination of Colorado, Dallas.
No, for sure. And I mean, it's really sad. I mean, if you lost in the first round in the East, that kind of tells you the state of your franchise, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. You're right.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but in all honesty, out west, I mean, I feel like these series are going to go pretty deep. You know, it's Colorado-Dallas it's been fun to watch. They're two good teams. And I think for the Canucks and the Oilers, they kind of just got to figure it out. Like, who's going to kind of assert themselves for long stretches of time and you know, maybe get that goaltending to stay lucky and hot for Vancouver, and can the Oilers, whichever they go, can they get average goaltending, which would probably be enough so far in this series. So it'll be interesting because you look at the Rangers; those guys can be done so quick, and these other series are still going to be ongoing for, I don't know, another 5-6 days at least. So you're going to have a ton of rest, and you factor in the travel factor. There's way less travel out east on top of that, so they will be fresh. I don't know. It's going to be tough. Like, I think that there's a lot of strong teams out west here, and I think it's going to be tough for whoever makes it out here to beat those teams. But they're going to be battle tested when they make it through this round of 3.
One thing I've noticed, to me, I don't know, just watching this Vancouver-Edmonton series, it's very high emotion, and you know, to me, it's been good hockey. But I think either whoever comes out of that series is going to be in tough against Colorado and Dallas. I think those other two teams are a step above, just with their depth, the way that they play, with their structure, all of that. Now, it's unfair for me because if Vancouver had Demko, who is a difference maker. Now, Sheloff has been brilliant, but let's just say Demko's a rock star. Demko is a Vezina finalist. He's that good. If you had Demko and you had Pettersson playing to his capabilities, I noticed him once last night. I think at some point he's going to arrive in this series and be a difference maker, and I think the Oilers are hoping that he doesn't, because he might be the difference to put them over the top. But I look at that Dallas-Colorado series, and whoever comes out of there would be my Cup favorite from the West, because they're that good. I think both of those teams, that's a coin flip for me.
I agree with you, and I think, again, if that ends up happening, Colorado-Dallas versus Florida-New York, like, that's a serious Cup final. Like, that's not a – there's no Cinderella. You know, there's no team that just rode a hot goalie and miraculously pulled something off. If it's Dallas, Florida in a Cup final, that'll be terrible for the Canadian audience. But those two teams, like, they're big. They play for keeps. They're deep. They have good goalies, coaches who have been around forever. You know, like, there's a real potential for a bloodbath in the Cup final, which I think actually would be really good for the league, considering what you set up the top, Struddy, about how you need the emotion, you need the physicality.
Yeah.
And I think when I watched those other series, guys, you know, I thought through the Vancouver-Edmonton series didn't really start till game 2 or 3 with that anger, that intensity. You know what we saw at the end of the game last night? We've seen some scrums and battles, and, you know, think about, you know, the hit on Marchand, you know, by Bennett. Like, there's a lot of intensity, and now I think that's the first little bit we've seen. So it's interesting when you go from, like, game to game. You can just see the intensity that is or isn't in a series. It was missing, I think, in Vancouver-Edmonton. Now we've got it. And then how does that play out as far as guys getting injured or nicked up, and then what that means translating to round 3 for whichever team makes it.
Yeah. Struddy, you see some of these plays, you know, the Bennett play of Marchand, you know, the Soucy play, and, you know, a lot of plays that aren't called as well. Do you remember a dirty play you got away with at all in your career? Do you ever remember, like, suckering somebody in a scrum or something and kind of getting away with it?
So I don't teach this at my D-men camps, but when I felt like a forward was running me and I didn't like it, when a guy was coming in front of the net, there was a point shot, I would cross-check him down forward. So now he'd be going down forward, and they would hit him, you know, maybe in the back or whatever, and that's really dirty. And I remember I did it in junior one time, and this guy, Chris Wells, jumped up, and he was so mad. Like, he was ready to kill me. And I was like, I probably earned it, but don't run me anymore, right? But that was like that. If I did that, you would cross the line. And I did it a handful of times in my NHL career. I feel more bad about it now. Luckily, when no one got hurt, but that is really, really dirty. Like, that is because the guy can't protect himself, right? You're cross-checking him down. He goes forward like he's diving into the pool. Noodles 3-foot pool, and then he can get hit in the back. It's pretty dangerous. But when you're mad, sometimes you make bad choices, boys.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. Exactly. The blood is boiling out there. That is particularly dirty, like an
So
Al
greasy.
McInnes clapper along the ice, and Struddy's just burying some guy right into the lane. Yeah, that's uncalled for.
It was bad. It was bad. Yeah,
That's a good
I don't advocate that anymore. You don't really see that anymore.
No, that's particularly 80s and 90s kind of goon squad type stuff, which we appreciate. But yeah, listen, there's still scrums. You know, that hasn't been eradicated from the game. There's still guys coming in with their sticks up and throwing punches, and still don't see fights. You see Brady Tkachuk today over at the Worlds. He's just dying for someone to fight him at the World Championships.
So angry. Why is he so angry? He's always wanting to fight, chasing guys around. I'm like, God, relax.
He's always angry. Like, that's supposed to be just a nice little European vacation. And Brady
friendly.
wants to
the guys
people.
are drinking together after the games and stuff like that, and he's chasing people. That's just him, though.
He can't turn it off.
Yeah,
I love that. He's just he was so mad. Like, Claire Hanna was like, "What do you make of all this?" And he's like, "Well, you can't fight. I'll just leave it at that. I'd really like to just destroy someone out here." But anyway, we'll leave it at that. Good stuff, Struddy. Go Oilers, Game 4. We're pulling for them, and I'm sure we'll chat up next time we have you on after a big win. We look forward to that.
Yeah, I honestly think it's going to be all square after 4 here.
Yep.
And then it gets interesting. That Vancouver, was it Rogers, what do they call it, Rogers Arena? Whatever. It's been amazing. It's been a great, I have some friends that have been going, they say it's just a madhouse. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be tight. It's going to be a tight one, so I look forward to it tomorrow night.
All right, Struddy. Enjoy, buddy. We'll do it again soon. There's Jason Strudwick joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline.
Keep in mind, like, he's an alumni of both organizations.
That's right. And the Rangers.
Yeah,
right?
he played for Vancouver and played pretty well there, and then, finished his career. I think he finished his career at Edmonton, but you're right, and played for the Rangers. So, I mean, he has ties to these organizations. Yes, he's an Edmonton guy and all that, but he should be happy that Vancouver's playing well too. Lost in all of this is Vancouver's had a very unique playoff. Like, this is a resilient group. Like, think of the comeback against Nashville. Think of the comeback against Edmonton in Game 1. Sheloff steals the game last night. It's not just your run-of-the-mill, hey, we won 3-2 and, everyone played well. Like, it's been high-event hockey, or at least high-anxiety hockey for their fan base. Like, they've had a pretty unique run here, and they're doing it without their number one goalie.
With Demko out, there's been multiple overtime games. They've been on the right side of it, wrong side of it. Yeah, that's why, I agree with your assessment that on paper, and even the way they're currently playing, Colorado and Dallas are better. Yet we seem to fall in that trap every year where, let's say it is Vancouver playing Dallas. It'll be, this is the end of the road. I don't know. I mean,
no, you don't.
It happens. Like Vancouver, how many times in the past would we have said, this is it. Final in 2006, the Oilers, this is going to be it. They can't beat this team, or even Florida last year, even when they got going, it's like, all right, that's enough. They're not going to get past them. And you just keep going and going and going. Montreal, exactly. In the bubble, it was like, there's no way they're going to beat the Leafs and no way they'll beat Winnipeg. No way they'll beat Vegas. They just kept winning, and that happens seemingly every year. And you look back and say, all right, it makes sense now that we've seen it, but it didn't make sense to project it before it happened. So anything's possible. There's 8 teams left. That's a pretty good 25% of the league is playing. 75% are gone. Yeah. Like you're in pretty good standing right now. And if you're in Vancouver, you're loving life. You're up 2-1 against a big rival. Big rival, and the media's going at it over there. It's great, man. It's been a blast. Yeah. All right, so Keegan Matheson coming up. Jays in Baltimore. Keegan will join us from Baltimore. Jack Armstrong coming up on the Raptors, giving up that 8th pick to San Antonio yesterday. Where do they go from here? His take on a number of things in the NBA, including Denver winning both in Minnesota and the Knicks losing both in Indiana. There's a lot going on in the NBA playoffs. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, Keegan Matheson coming up. The Jays are down in Baltimore after they dropped 2 of 3 over the weekend. Manoah pitched well. And, the Ernie Clement error meant that the home run, those runs were unearned, yet it was a home run off him. Like, this is the thing about baseball. You look at the stat line, you're like, they were unearned. Yeah, he still, he threw a pizza down the middle and it got rocked, and the runs still count, and you still lost the game. But, again, the offense was so anemic yesterday, it didn't matter. It didn't matter how well he pitched, and it should have been a good feeling. Like, the guy pitches 7 innings yesterday. That's a good start, man. He looked good. He was energized. Place was rocking for the most part for him and supportive of him. And yet, again, the bats go cold and nothing comes of it. And I saw, some stats earlier about, how many people were in attendance and how it was down year over year, which I don't know how concerning. It should be concerning. I mean, it's Mother's Day. It's a Sunday. You would think that would be a sellout. And it wasn't. But when the team's playing the way they're playing, you have the offseason you had that was really, really disappointing. I think this speaks to, where people are at with this team, the idea that they might be sellers at the deadline, which very well could be the case. And if they keep playing like this, it's mandatory. You have to do it. But they're not going to announce that publicly because you can't. You can't let ticket buyers and ticket sellers know that you're punting on a season.
Well, this
certainly not in May. You can't do it in mid-May.
I was just going to say, isn't it a little early to be like, we're going to be sellers?
But they're terrible, Noodles.
Like, I know. I watched the game the other day. I watched their comeback too.
That was great on Saturday. The bats came alive.
I watched it down 7-1, flicked it over. I was watching something else, came back, and I'm like, we're at 7-3, 7-5. And the end pull up. You end up winning that game. Yeah, but. Man, oh man! Like Bo looks you always say this, Hayes, like he's somebody in a dark spot. Like he just doesn't look right to me. Everything when he came to the plate, he just was swinging at a check swing. He ended up getting struck out at that time. But for some reason, he just doesn't look right to me. I don't know what.
No, he's not. I mean, and his statistics would indicate that too. He has not been in a groove at any point in the season, to the point where they moved him up and down the lineup a lot. And there's, been a lot of debate over who should lead off. And it's Schneider tonight. I don't even think Springer's playing because it sounds like Jansen's out with back spasms, and he's been red hot. Like Jansen's to the point where if he's not behind the plate, he's got a DH. The way he's hitting right now. Kiermaier's out, Springer's out, Turner's out. I guess they're all under the weather, courtesy of John Schneider. And that's not a surprise. Everyone seems to be sick right now. But, Springer, they put him back in the leadoff spot yesterday. It went nowhere for them.
What was the reason for that, Hayes? Like, I turned over the game and was like, wait a second. Schneider had a great game the day before batting leadoff. Why not just go
My assumption would be, and this is the weird thing about baseball. I remember getting into, not an argument, but a conversation with Gibbons about this, John Gibbons, when he was managing the team. And even when he was not managing and just as an analyst, and he would call in and talk to us. And I'd ask him, like, what's up with this? Like, why does that guy have to play this position? Why does that guy have to hit in this position? And he'd just say, well, it's baseball, and that's where he goes. In other words, Springer's a vet. They're paying him a fortune. He's been a career leadoff guy and a phenomenal leadoff hitter throughout his career. Truly one of the best leadoff men in baseball the last decade. But he's been awful this year. He's killing you. He's a black hole leading off. And I've seen some reports, I don't know if there's truth to it, that Springer's bent out of shape, that he's not leading off. And I wouldn't be surprised if Schneider and company were like, all right, put him back, give him another shot. But that's got to come to an end. Like, it's not the George Springer show. It's the Blue Jays. It's like we talk about all these teams. It doesn't matter how much you're making or how big of a star you are, how many jerseys have been sold. Are you in it to win it or not? And with Springer, I think he's just in a position where he can't lead off anymore. And again, he's out tonight with illness anyway, but I think David Schneider should have gone back to the top of the lineup anyway because of how well he's been playing. So, I mean, that's kind of hanging over the team, but Manoah, again, pitched pretty well yesterday, and they couldn't find a way to get a win. But, speaking of that, the attention on star players in the city, obviously the last, few weeks have revolved around the Maple Leaf Stars.
Right.
And there's all these reports out there that, Craig Berube, Darren Dreger reporting, Berube had a kind of 2-day interview up here in Toronto over the weekend, and Todd McClellan's in town and probably doing the same thing today and tomorrow. I wanted to play a clip, from a couple of years ago in St. Louis. It caused a big stir. Craig Berube speaking about his stars in St. Louis. So let's play this, and then we'll discuss how it would fly in Toronto if Berube gets the job.
Our best players don't play with any passion, no emotion, and no inspiration at all. They don't play inspired hockey. You cannot play in this league without emotion, grit, and being inspired. They're getting paid lots of money, and they're not doing the job. End of story. That's it. That's what it boils down to.
I love that clip.
Oh, man.
That is pretty honest. If he gets the job and he says that 20 games into the season, what's your response, Jonas?
That's going to be a much bigger storm here than it is in St. Louis. I've heard coaches say that. We've heard Sheldon Keefe say that. It did not go over well at certain points. You remember Elite Players Gate? Do you remember this?
Yeah, I think – let me give you my take on it, and you guys tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. I think the days of everyone being hypersensitive to the egos and the emotions of the core four are over. And I think there was a time where this city and the fan base had been programmed to believe the only way this team can win is with these guys being the guys.
Well, they told the fans that.
Well, exactly. Right. That was Shanahan and company. It was like, these guys are going to get it done. They're the guys. And to be fair, prior to Shanahan arriving and prior to them getting Matthews and Marner and Nylander and even Tavares, this was a fan base and a franchise that was really had not had superstars in a long, long time. Like even Matt Sundin, superstar Hall of Famer, unbelievable player, was never up for the Hart. Mm-hmm. And if you look at those Leaf teams in the late 90s and early 2000s, after Sundin, there were a lot of really good players, like very, very good players, not perennial all-stars though. Like McGillney was there, but it was later in his career. Roberts, McCabe, Cavalier, really, really good players. Curtis Joseph was a superstar for sure, and I guess Eddie Belfour, but Eddie was at the end of his career. But the point I'm making is that there was, a 12 to 14-year run there where there just weren't superstars. Like Phil Kessel was not a superstar, very good player, not a superstar. JVR, the same thing. Dion Phaneuf, etc. So people were naturally craving that, and when Matthews and Marner and them arrived, it was like, wow, this is something different. And this, because it's different, this is actually going to work. And I think when Keefe said what he'd say, or if Babcock said what he'd say, or Lou Lamoriello would say what he'd say, people were like, no, don't get stupid. Don't run these guys out of town. Don't make them uncomfortable. They're the saviors. They're the guys that are going to get the job done. We need them. I think that's over.
But the only thing
I think it's completely finished, and I don't think anyone cares anymore if Matthews or Nylander or Marner have their feelings hurt by a coach. If anything, I think it would be embraced and promoted.
I think you're half right. I think the only reason you're wrong is what he or whoever the coach ends up being will learn is you can't do that all the time here because it just becomes a you-know-what storm for 3 days. And, if you keep doing that, it's just... You just can't do it here.
Well, I don't think he was doing it weekly, though, in St. Louis.
No, but it's not like he did not have issues with some of their better players there. We saw what happened with Jordan Kyrou at the end. Who knows what their relationship was like. But, clearly some of that stuff didn't rub everyone the right way. And maybe that's not a bad thing. You're not wrong.
But eventually, guys, we see this all the time. Hardened coaches come with a shelf life.
Yes. 100%.
They're not 8-year guys. Mm-hmm. They are 3 to 5 years, depending on what you get out of the team, how the message is received. Now, the one thing I think that right away Craig Berube would help is a culture change. Because right now the perception from the outside, I'm not in the dressing room, I'm not anywhere near the Leafs, but it's a country club around there. Things are easy. Guys are treated like kings, like gods, all of that, and that's, I'm tongue in cheek on the Marner comment, but it is a first class organization. They have first class everything. It is the deepest pockets. By all accounts, it is just everything is the best. Mm-hmm. But you expect the results. I don't know. The first thing I thought about is Craig Berube takes over. Is there going to be a DJ at practice?
Probably not.
Probably
No.
done.
Yep,
I would say to
probably
that
not.
guy, pack up your little suitcase and get the hell out of
It's
here.
actually the video coach who does that. So he's
Doesn't
not.
matter. Doesn't matter. He can
Yeah.
take a lap too if he starts spinning music when they're trying to work. That's stuff like that. To me, it goes a long way. Like I look at that and it's an attitude. It's a way. Yeah, hey, we want to create remember Shanny's like, we want to create a safe space for everybody. That's, you have to be uncomfortable sometimes. When things aren't going well, you come to work and you got to dig in. You go, hey, we didn't play well last night. I want to dig in. It's not, hey, let's turn the music up. Let's go for a little, skills skate. And there's 95 skills people out there and that. It's, hey, we're going to work for 25 minutes, 30 minutes and get ready for tomorrow's game. To me, it would be a no-nonsense approach. That's what I mean as far as a slight culture change. It comes with the attitude of the coach and it comes with what he demands. So, you could argue maybe things shifted. Lou Lamoriello, I don't know if he would have wanted certain things to develop along the way. But when Kyle took over, it went in a different direction. Hey, we're going to, we're going to be progressive. We're going to be outside the box and stuff like that. I still don't, to this day, I don't know any NHL team that has music during practice. Am I wrong on that?
I can't tell you what happens in other markets. I don't know.
But it just, like, to me, and whether they do or not, I don't really care. I'm trying to make a point as to, I think Rick Tocchet went into Vancouver. He was all business. Guys look back on the bench and they see that face staring at him going, you better compete for me tonight because I'm going to call you out. If not, like, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. Like, that's what Craig Berube, that attitude, will bring to this team. Whether they receive it or not, whether the team, the way it's constructed, if Tree, reshapes the roster to reflect what Craig Berube or whoever the new coach would be, if he's a hardened coach, that's what I'm looking for. That's the way I would see it.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. And listen, you got to balance both. It's not just rah-rah.
No, you're right.
Like, he's still got to be tactical. He's still, and that's what we got into earlier, Jonas, that, that cup ring can go a certain distance. And I think he's a motivational coach, which I don't think hurts. But I think, it's a long grind. There are off days that are necessary. You do need to have a balance. And I think, to be fair to Craig Berube, I'm sure he's aware of that. He's been in the league for 40 years, basically, as a player, as a coach. Like, he's not unaware of the way things work. He's not raw. He's got a style. Like, everyone's got a style. Keefe had a style. Babcock had a style. Berube's got a style. Cooper's got one. Brindamore. They all have a style. Yeah. You got to buy into it. Once you pick who your guy is, you better pick the right guy. And you're banking on that coach's style having a positive effect. And ultimately the coach still is only going to go so far. It's still the players that have to take it over the top.
Right.
The new coach will get credit for that, but the players have to play. The players have got to be the ones that show up in crunch time and willing to supply big moments at big times. And these their best players have just been immune to that over the past.
Well, and Hayes, they're at a different point in their career, too. Like, they were young at that point.
Right.
And I think that was part of it. Like, they were 21, 22. Like, they came in. These guys are, like, Matthews is going to be 27. Nylander's 28. Like, they're at different points in their career, so maybe you can do a little bit more of that. But, like, Noodles, I think you're right. Like, there was a lot of – it was just, like, little things, like, over the years where it's, like, a star player's not playing well, and the coach gets asked about him. He's like, well, he's doing this. And there's no criticism. There's no, like,
straight shooter sometimes.
Right. There's none of that. And that kind of came later in Sheldon Keefe's time, but there would be, like, just little things. Like, they never changed the power play. You know what I mean? Like, none of the star players ever, except Nylander, were taken off the power play. Like, it was just, like, little stuff where it's like, these guys are kind of off to the side. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Hayes, to your point, like, maybe that's what has to change now, where it's like, you're our best players. We're going to hold you accountable more than anybody to set the tone for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's Belichickian. It's
Greg Popovich.
It's Popovichian. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, by all accounts, Pop would go at Tim Duncan all the time. Belichick would go at Brady. Who's the equivalent here? Matthews. Like, that's a good question. Like, does that's the guy that you got to sit down and ask him, what does it matter to you? What's your priority? Ideally, you have all of it. Ideally, I'm sure if you asked Matthews, what does an ideal career look like to you? He'd say Stanley Cup winner, greatest goal scorer ever, greatest American-born player ever, greatest Leaf ever. Like, he can achieve all four. Mm-hmm. But, getting the cup might take away from some of the others. Like, they're all connected in a way. Like you gotta balance it out though. Like, in order to be the greatest Leaf ever, greatest American-born player, I would argue greatest goal scorer ever, you got to do it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, that would be my approach, sitting him down, saying, listen, during the regular season, you've already established yourself as maybe the greatest regular season Leaf ever. I'm not sure there's much debate on that. Mm-hmm. Maybe the greatest American-born regular season player ever. Close to it. Kane's been great. Chelios, there's a lot of great Americans, but he can make a case for it. He won the Hart. And certainly in terms of goal scoring during the regular season, Ovi never scored 69. His goals per game, he's ahead of where Ovi was this year at this point in his career. He could make an argument for that. It all falls flat based on his playoff performances and his playoff stats and the fact that they haven't won anything. So, that's the guy you got to get in line.
Well, and the messaging to me, has to be different from the top of the organization. Like, even after, Game 7, I didn't love what Sheldon Keefe said, where it's well, we did this really well, and it's the power play was and then you heard the players come out and they kind of said, well, we were close, and it's well, guys, this is the first round.
Right, exactly.
If that's what you think, if you think that's close, then you're being told the wrong thing or you have the wrong impression.
But how would they know, Jonas?
Oh, well, to me,
how would they know what close? They've never been close.
Well, then that's got to come to me from the top down, from Shanahan to Tree Living to Keefe or whoever the coach is, where it's guys, we're way far away from this. And, Tree Living, spoke to the group at locker cleanout day. I don't know exactly what the message was, but I hope it was, we are a long way away from being a team that wins a cup, and we got to get closer.
Well, you know what the message from the top is, Jonas? Change. That's the message from the top is roster construction to go, this isn't working. We're going to change this, and we're going to get it right or make it right in the way that we feel. That would be the message from the top, is however comfortable you guys are and all of that, this isn't happening. We are going to change some things in here and change players, change attitude, all of that type of stuff. If you take it out of their hands, and again, there are certain things. Marner controls his own destiny. So does John Tavares. But I think Brad Tree Living, if he's given free rein to change what he wants to change, there will be. It'll be through osmosis, because that core will not be the same next year. And then that starts the message, what we've been doing doesn't work. And then you bring in a hardened coach, a guy who has some accountability. You were mentioning Belichick and Popovich. I played for Daryl Sutter. You guys know I love Daryl. Jerome McGinley played for Daryl. Jerome always talks Daryl was his best coach, and he had so many coaches throughout his career, including Olympics, all of that. Daryl was honest, with respect. Now, the only thing that Daryl didn't do a lot was call players out in the media. If anything, he was very protective of his players. But it didn't mean it wasn't behind closed doors. He'd walk in. I mean, there were many times where he'd say, Jerome and Kipper, you two are the only chance we have here. We're all sitting there. We're hey, we're players too. And he would say, Jerome, if you're not better than that player, we have no chance to win. Kipper, if you're not better than play. It was honest assessment, but he would call them out. But then he would play the hell out of them too. Say, you go out and play, give us an opportunity. I think that's where Matthews, getting back to what you're talking about, Brian, if you have a relationship with a coach that is hard on you but pushes you to be your best, say, Austin, I need you tonight, game 3 in the playoffs, not game 26, in Florida or wherever it is in Carolina. Right. I need you tonight. You have to be better than that guy, and we have no chance of winning if you're not. Challenging him to his face. And special players they actually welcome that challenge because they expect it out of themselves. So it's the relationship the new coach is going to develop with these players to get the best out of them.
Keegan Matheson in about 20 minutes. Jays Orioles tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, so the NFL schedule is slowly starting to come out. There's some news, too, in the NFL. Jared Goff has got himself a monster extension in Detroit. which I appreciate. It's like $212 million, $170 million guaranteed. Remember the Stafford deal? Like the perception of that was that Goff was a throw-in.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of guaranteed money. They'll let it fade for a couple of years, and they're bottoming out, and they're going to draft their next QB. What a great story, and he's been unbelievable for them since he got there. Like, this is a totally justified contract.
Yeah.
And he's won playoff games in Detroit, something that hasn't happened in like 30 years. And he's built himself up a nice little reputation and legacy in Detroit. Jerry Goff.
Highest paid Lion in franchise history.
Of all time. I love it. And again, totally justified. He was great last year. He was great the year before. Like they almost were a playoff team 2 years ago. They were last year. They won the division. You know, they go to the championship game. They had the championship game. It's right there for them. And Goff has been great. And he's been great specifically playing in Detroit. Like at home, he's been phenomenal. So that's a pretty cool story. And the NFL season will start on September 5th, which is great. That seems like it's pretty early in September. Sometimes it feels like it can get to September 12th, 13th. And it'll be Kansas City against Baltimore to open the year.
Yeah.
And I like that game, Jonas. That feels like it's
great.
Appropriate for the opener, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lamar versus Patrick Mahomes. And Fox.
Brady? Will Brady be in there?
Tom Brady's making his debut in Cleveland, of all places. Fox, it'll be Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady. Cleveland versus the Cowboys at 4:25 that opening Sunday, which I think could be bigger than the game itself. I want to hear Brady. I want to see what he's all about.
Yeah.
You know,
who do you want to hear more, Belichick on the Manning cast or Brady?
Brady for sure. I want to see what he's got. Like calling a game, like Belichick will be relaxed and sitting there talking football. That's going to be really compelling. Brady's got to be. He's in the mix.
He's got to be dialed in.
He's got to be dialed in, man. It's go time. So more on that into the next hour. Overdrive continues TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.